Hey guys, welcome to this week's live stream. I'm Kaloyan, Publishing Manager. Very happy to be with you once again. And I'm with Alexander.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Today we have two parts in this live stream. We'll first have a session of Q&A for 10 to 15 minutes. So feel free to send us questions on the conversation and we'll have a look at it. And then I will talk about fever and risk reward in games. A small presentation that can be very useful for you in the ideation phase and to improve your prototypes. So let's take some questions, Alexander. Have you found any?
Cool. So thanks a lot, everyone, for submitting your questions. We'll just go through a couple before Karayan will present. And I'm just picking one at random, which is from James De Raja. So thanks a lot for submitting that. The question is, even if you have great graphics, you can only reduce CPI. Actually, it was a response. You can only reduce CPI. You can't increase retention. And you can only reduce CPI with a great gameplay. And that's a really good point. Our general guidelines point that gameplay itself, the core mechanic, will be the main driver of your CPI. And on that point, I also wanted to mention something that we've shared with you guys on other live streams, which is that the balance, the gender balance in a game has a big impact on how scalable that CPI is going to be. So if you can get a 50% women and men in your game, for instance, take Helix Jump, but take maybe Fireballs, which is close to that as well, or Paper, what you'll find is that it's much easier to hack or to maintain a low CPI with a good balance in the game than it is with a game that has, say, 99% men versus women. And so we've actually looked at some research online which points to the types of gameplays that women like in a game, and we'll just share that with you now. So if you take a look at this quick chart, what this indicates is that this is no secret. If you look at games like Candy Crush, obviously, match 3 games in general have a very high percentage of females in them. And so this is really good to know. More important than colors is the actual gameplay. And part of the reason behind that is that what we find makes for a successful game with women is more than nice colors or even a cute avatar. What makes more of a difference is what is the core mechanic, what is the gameplay itself. Does it involve things like social interactions in the game, or even how you relate to the other avatars in the game or to the game itself. We find is that the ability to maybe interact more with the game is key. And in particular, we found that actually women don't spend less time in games, but they tend to relieve stress with games like men. But they prefer doing that in more casual games rather than be fully immersed in a complicated gameplay. And so if you look at these different gameplays that we've listed here, you'll be able to see that a lot of these don't apply to hyper casual. But if you're able to take these lessons and the learnings and apply them to your prototypes, you'll be able to lower those CPIs, as was mentioned, by including more women in your games. So just moving on to another question.
Yeah, I just found an interesting question about IO game. Are IO games still worth making, or the trend is gone? I take that question because you might remember that I did a presentation on it a few weeks ago. I don't believe the trend is gone. It's still interesting to do multiplayer game. It doesn't have to be .io. And if you want to do .io games or multiplayer games, really be innovative. Once again, kind of connected to what Alex just said, CPI is 90% based on innovation, on the core gameplay, on the core mechanic. So you can of course do multiplayer type of game, IO type of game, but be innovative. It shouldn't look too much like All or Bumper or games that we have already released and that are known by the players. So be innovative and do whatever you want, as long as you follow the game guidelines and that you bring something new to the market.
Cool. I'm gonna just another question actually from James. How do I get a publishing manager to review our games? Really good question. It's very simple. You should have an indication when you submit a prototype that as soon as your game reaches 40% day 1 and 10% day 7, and you're able to attract maybe over 80 or 100 users in your prototype, that's when we get in touch and we help you get across the publishing line, which is 5522, and with about 250 users in your game. So we really work with you at that point to optimize the game and to think about the game. And so until you reach that point, it's best to continue prototyping fairly quickly. And then when you reach that point, we'll work with you closely on that prototype.
Question from Daniel Kim. Is it better to try merging game concepts or coming up with something completely new? It's tricky because being radically innovative and bring something new in every parameter of the game is very challenging because you have the camera, you have the controlling, you have the kind of game, you have the genre. But what I would say is that merging some games and just slightly change the graphic or the mechanic will almost never get you to a low CPI for the reason that it's not very innovative. So there is a trade-off and you need to be as innovative as possible in any parameter that you can find. So think about everything, and what I would advise is that really every time you take a decision when you develop your game or you think about the ID, think about ultra casual players, ultra casual moments, and try to fit the market as much as possible and innovate in that way. That's the direction you should take. So merge less, innovate more. That's what I would say.
Cool. A couple of questions. So I'm actually, James is very active right now, so I'm picking on you. So you're asking about should you change the background in your game? White backgrounds, high CPIs. You mentioned. I recommend you to look at our videos in the dashboard on color contrast and on CPI. Those really clarify what we're looking for. If you have a good gameplay and if the contrast is clear, so the gameplay is YouTubeable and it's easy to understand and the color contrast is right, there shouldn't be a reason to think that the colors and the background colors is what is driving your high CPIs. And yeah, moving on to just another question from Brian Nelson. Is there anything? Is there such a thing as being too innovative? Good question. We've never seen a game where we felt, oh my god, I haven't seen this. It's never gonna work. It's actually a lot of the time if we pick up a new prototype and we're surprised by it, the chances are it's going to work well in some way, either CPI or retention. So definitely go out of the box. As long as you try to stay in hyper casual, then you should be fine to innovate, and we can always steer you in the right direction if you're taking too much risk. But we really encourage you to do it.
Yeah. If I can complete, it's basically innovation under constraint. So you should innovate as much as possible, but in the direction of being ultra casual. So of course you can innovate in making the game more system 2 or more complex visually, less YouTubeable, but that's not a good innovation for us because your KPIs will decrease. If you innovate and make the game more ultra casual, it will perform better. That's for sure.
What should we take a couple of more questions and then jump into the case study?
Yeah, there is an interesting one here from Clack TV. Is it better to keep a game easy for longer? I found making a game hard reduced my retention. That's something we're going to talk about a little bit after. But basically, ultra casual players want games that are System 1, easy to understand, very basic, and they are not really skilled player for two reasons. I think the first one is because they're themselves unskilled. They're newcomers into the game market. They don't play that many games. So if you make a game more difficult, they will enjoy it less. And second, because ultra casual is also about the moment you play the game. So I'm more an hardcore player, but I also play ultra casual game in certain moment of the day. When I'm in the transportation, in the metro, in the bus, when I'm watching a series. I guess most of you guys do the same. There are moments when you play that kind of game, and that are moments when you're not very focused on it 100%. You're not here to improve yourself and be more skilled. You're here to have a nice moment, be rewarded. And so making your game easier and more rewarding is actually exactly what people want. It shouldn't be way too easy, because then there is no reward if you don't have to focus a little bit. But it shouldn't be based on difficulty, that's for sure. So the easier, the better.
Yeah, and just bouncing on that point, if you take a game like 10Q, which we often mention, you can go through like 25 or 30 levels, and it's very hard to lose. And another thing that's interesting are actually our own teams internally often go into the streets, for instance, and have random people in the street pick up the game, play it, and see how they're reacting to it. It's important every time you test a prototype that you go see someone fresh who's never played the prototype before. And 9 times out of 10, you'll probably be surprised at how difficult the game is, either to understand the core mechanic, how many deaths does it take to understand the game, or B, to evolve through literally 10 levels that might be very short. So make sure that you test your new prototypes actively with new users on every iteration. That's really important.
Question easy to answer from Michael Kashatrian. Sorry if I didn't say that well. Is it still possible to have a successful game that is masculine? It is very difficult, because basically you lose half of the potential player on the planet. So when you do your game, think about women, think about them a lot, because I assume like most of the developers and most of the people that play games, you're a man. And so focus on women and on what they want, because you really want to have that 50-50 percentage between men and women. You will have more potential players, so a lower CPI. It's automatic.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's enough. Maybe after my presentation I can stay a little bit live to answer more questions if you have any. But I think we'll move on to perfect and risk reward now. Thanks, Alex.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
So we're going to talk about risk reward and the perfect. Basically, what I want to discuss is a feature and also a tip for you. It's how to make better perfects in your game. It's connected to many questions I've seen in the channel, so I hope it will help you guys to develop games with more depth. Basically, what we see in many games is that you achieve to have an okay CPI, a good day one, and then very quickly it decreases and you lose many players because your game lacks of depth and challenge and reward in it. And this kind of way of doing the perfect and thinking about your game can help you to increase the deaths and increase the retention in your game, D2, D3, D7. So the idea is that what you want to achieve in your game is that there are two ways of playing it. There is the first way that is safe and contemplative. As you said, and as I said, it's an easy way of playing the game. You barely can't lose. You just enjoy the moment, get rewarded a little bit. It triggers a common feeling. So usually that kind of game loop comes from a GIF, from a daily experience, from a feeling that we all share and we enjoy. It's almost a video, a movie more than a game. You have a nice experience and it's easy to do. It's safe, it's contemplative. And there is a second way of playing the game that is inside the gameplay itself, the basic one. You can, in the same gameplay, choose for a riskier way of playing. A way that will be more rewarding. It can be more rewarding in terms of scoring, but it's a bit system 2, you know it. But also visually. Basically what you want is that player will be greedy and they will want to play that most complicated way, that riskier way, and lose because of that. So there is the safe way, and there is the gameplay improvement, the risky way, an experience that you want to live again, and that will make you stay in the game. The question is how you do that in your game, and that's what the perfect or the fever is about. The fever you want to create should not be based only on scoring, because scoring is about numbers, you need to compute, it's a bit system 2, it's not obvious for people. Also, it shouldn't be based on skills, for the reason that ultra casual players are unskilled, that we said, and you want your games to be forgiving. So the solution we have is that this perfect and this second way of playing should be based on greed, it should be based on choice. So you trigger that feeling that we all have, that is to be greedy, so that we will get a better reward. I can get the rationale behind it by showing you that skill curve, which basically separate the different game genre by skills you need to perform the game. So you have the hardcore game that are very skill based. The kind of player that play that game, or the kind of moment where you play that game, you're 100 focus. You want to improve your skills, and you will lose a lot, and you will enjoy losing because you will know it's difficult, and so you will be rewarded. And then you move to mid-core, still skill based, a little bit less. And then to casual games like Angry Birds, you don't achieve the level at the first time, and so that's why you're happy to pass it after a few trials. But you need to be focused, you need to aim precisely. It's skill based. And then you have ultra casual, which is different, and in which you have the less skills possible. And that's because, as I said, you have players that are unskilled because they don't know games that well and not as well as we do. And they are also playing at moments during which they cannot be focused on their skill. They're doing something else at the same time, they're talking, they're in the transportation, sometimes a bit tired. They want to enjoy the moment. And so, in a summary, something that you should keep in mind when you do your game, develop your ideas and build your different kind of gameplay inside your gameplay, is basically that people should not die because they were unskilled, but because they choose to take a risk that was rewarding and fail because of that. Basically, they could have been safe, but they have been greedy, and so they lost because of that, and they want to play again without being greedy. Because, you don't like that feeling that, I should have taken less risk, and so next time I will take less and I will be safe. But actually the reward is so good that they will take the risk again and lose again and enter in that loop and play day and day, so that they will trigger that feeling over and over. I have 2 examples of that in 2 of our very successful game. First one is, you recognize it, Helix Jump. In Helix Jump, you have the first way of playing it, safe and contemplative. You just look at the ball bounce and you play one platform at a time, very safe, and basically you never lose. But at one point you realize that if you pass 3 platforms at a time, you turn into fever mode and you destroy the next one. It's very rewarding, very juicy. Everybody enjoys that feeling. And so when you play the game, you start by playing safe, but actually you really want to turn into fever mode. And as you can see in the video, you lose because of that. The visual feedback and the gameplay improvement is so good that you want to do it again and again. And that's why people play Helix Jump like that for such a long time, because they don't lose because of them. They have the skill to make it, but they chose to lose. You can see that in another example. That is our last release, Fireball 3D. You have a very safe way of playing the game. It's just shooting the balls one at a time, very slowly, and avoid the barriers. But you're stacking the fever and you see it on the screen. And so you will want to keep shooting multiple times until the very last second before the barrier arrives. And that at that moment that you lose. So once again, you die because you chose to die, but not because you were unskilled. You took the decision to die by being greedy. This is a new way of doing the perfect, a way that can help you to do better perfects. I hope it helps you. Think about it when you develop your ideas. Think about it when you create the gameplay at the very first ideation phase. And also when you develop the game, when you have your prototype, ask yourself, is there two ways of playing my game? Is there a safe and contemplative way that is very enjoyable? And is there also a riskier way that is very rewarding, not only in terms of scoring, but also in terms of visual feedback and also haptic? Think about it, that feeling of vibration is also very cool. You can see it if you play Fireball 3D. That's all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Alexander is back at his desk to work on some games. I'll take some questions in a few minutes in the chat, so feel free to send me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
We'll be right back.